Welcome back to Iran Protests Weekly, where we round up the protest rallies of Iran's people against the mullah's regime. In the past week, the streets and squares of Iranian cities once again became the meeting grounds for an oppressed people who seized every opportunity to raise their voices against the corrupt and plundering clerical regime. This relentless resistance tells the story of an unbreakable will to achieve freedom and justice. Here's a recap of this week's protests in Iran. The past week saw a strong presence of retirees and their calls for justice in Tehran, Ahvaz, Isfahan, Shush, Sanandaj, Tabriz, Kermanshah, Rasht, Shiraz, and many other cities across the country. In Ahvaz, retirees once again voiced their protest against injustice and plunder, which has left their tables empty. They also called for the release of jailed labor activists. Isfahan also witnessed a massive march by the country's steel industry retirees. The marching steelworkers called for unity against oppression and encouraged retirees to shout for their rights. On Monday, November 3rd, Tehran saw a large-scale march by telecommunications retirees, who chanted against the regime's plundering and embezzlement of public funds. On the same day, telecommunications retirees in Tabriz also raised their voices against the plunder and looting by the clerical regime's officials and institutions who have taken over the company and plundered its assets, jeopardizing the lives of retirees who depend on pensions from the telecommunications fund.
مجلس حمایت می‌کند. ظلم و ستم کافیه. سفره ما خالیه. ظلم و ستم کافیه. سفره ما خالیه. تورم برای ایران مردم. گرانی تورم برای ایران مردم. گرانی تورم برای ایران مردم. گرانی تورم برای ایران مردم. ظلم و ستم کافیه. سفره ما خالیه. ظلم و ستم کافیه. سفره ما خالیه. کشور پردرآمد چه بر سر تو آمد. 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 هم مجلس هم دولت دروغ میگن به ملت. هم مجلس هم دولت دروغ میگن به ملت. هم مجلس هم دولت دروغ میگن به ملت. زهر تورم افتاده جان مردم. ای مجلس ای دولت بس دیگه. ای مجلس ای دولت بس دیگه خیانت ای مجلس ای دولت بس دیگه خیانت تا حق خود نگیریم از پا نمی‌نشینیم تا حق خود نگیریم از پا نمی‌نشینیم تا حق خود نگیریم از پا نمی‌نشینیم راهپیمایی با شکوه مردان فولادی و شیرزنان فولادی اینها کسانی هستند که 30 سال یا بیشتر کار کردند ولی امروز برای بیمه خود باید در کف خیابان باشند. اینها در بدترین شرایط کار کردند ولی اکنون برای حقوق قانونی خود در کف خیابان هستند. آیا عدالت دشمن ما همینجا دروغ میگن آمریکا دشمن ما همینجا دروغ میگن مدیران دروغگو خجالت خجالت مدیران دروغگو خجالت خجالت مدیران دروغگو خجالت خجالت مدیران دروغگو خجالت خجالت شرکت شده چند باره بخور تو کاره شرکت شده چند باره بخور تو کاره شرکت پر درآمد چه بر سر تو آمد شرکت پر درآمد چه بر سر تو آمد شرکت پر درآمد چه بر سر تو آمد ستاد فرمانه ما مخابرات برده حق ما رو خورده ستاد فرمانه ما مخابرات برده حق ما رو خورده بنیاد تابر شفا مخابرات برده حق ما رو خورده مملکت رو ادا کن سهامدار ادا کن حق ما رو ادا کن شرکت غارت کردن ما رو بیچاره کردن شرکت غارت کردن ما رو بیچاره کردن باز شخص داد بزن حق تو فریاد بزن باز شخص داد بزن حق تو فریاد بزن باز شخص داد بزن حق تو فریاد بزن.
On Saturday, November 1st, Tehran witnessed one of the largest protest gatherings of contract workers in the oil industry. Over 1,000 corporate and contract employees gathered in Pasteur Square, protesting injustice and their difficult living conditions. The protesters demanded a change in their employment status and the implementation of an equal payment system, on par with direct contract employees. On Wednesday, November 5th, oil workers and employees in the Baragan region also gathered to protest their dire job and living conditions. Last week, workers of the Isfahan steel company also gathered in front of the regime's provincial governor's office in the city, demanding payment of their overdue wages, full implementation of the job classification plan, and improvement of their living and working conditions. On Wednesday, municipal employees and workers in Ilam also held a rally to protest the non-payment of their meager salaries for 2 months. On Monday, November 3rd, Kermanshah saw a large gathering of hardworking nurses who protested against corruption, mismanagement, and the non-payment of their salaries and benefits for a year in front of the University of Medical Sciences, denouncing regime officials who have trampled their rights and take no responsibility. In Mashhad, on Wednesday, November 5th, nurses also raised their voices in protest against delays in nursing tariff payments and harsh working conditions, stressing that they will go nowhere until they get their rights. This week in Ahvaz, nurses held a protest by spreading out an empty dinner cloth on the ground. At this gathering, the nurses voiced their protest against difficult working conditions and unpaid dues. On Sunday, November 2nd, Tehran witnessed a gathering of buyers from the Flora residential project. victims whose small savings have been stolen by the regime's officials. On Monday, November 2nd, Kermanshah also saw a gathering of defrauded members of a scrap metal cooperative who protested in front of the regime's provincial governor's office. The CEO of this cooperative, a regime official, sold land originally allocated for fewer than 200 people to 560 people, and now to over 1,000, in a massive scam. On Sunday, applicants for the state-run national housing project in Isfahan also gathered to protest the plundering and looting of their investments. In the past week, owners of pickup trucks in Ahvaz went on strike, protesting heavy tolls and difficult working conditions. On Monday, November 3rd, taxi drivers in Sanandaj also launched a citywide strike to protest the excessive increase in the costs of fuel, spare parts, and daily expenses. On Wednesday, November 5th, small boat owners in Hendijan gathered in front of the regime's governor's office to protest restrictions on traditional import allowance for sailors and the resulting economic pressure. Poultry farmers also gathered to protest a 2-month delay in the allocation of feed, a vital resource for their production. On Wednesday, November 5th, pharmacists in Fars province also held a rally in front of the Social Security Medical Documents Office to protest the non-payment of 7 months of salaries and other dues. This marks the end of this episode of Iran Protests Weekly. We hope to have been able to reflect the clear and passionate voice of the Iranian people. Until the next time.
Follow the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran on YouTube, Facebook, X, and our website.